Good morning and welcome back to the Faith and Formation podcast. It is Thursday, December 4th, and we are in 2 Kings chapter 11. But today, back from a bit of a hiatus from the podcast, Brother Sam is with us. How you doing, Brother
Yes,
Sam?
doing great. I was out of town on a business trip, and then we had Thanksgiving last week, and weren't able to record the podcast then. And now we're back into the month of December.
It's just
Isn't
incredible.
that crazy?
It is truly crazy. Just this semester, I feel like has flown by.
I mean,
And,
I knew when it was like, as soon as it was getting into like mid-October, I was like, I'm going to blink and it's going to be Christmas right around the corner. You think, oh, it's 2 months away. And then now it's like you're looking out the window and they're talking about snow and all kinds of stuff. So
it is crazy. And speaking of crazy, the title of our lesson today.
What a great segue.
Look at that. A Crazy Queen is the name of our title for the devotional today. A bit of a fun one, honestly.
Yeah, that's a word for it.
Yeah, you could say fun, I guess. Maybe something else. And we'll dive right into that in just a moment. Before we do that, let's hit our memory verse for the week. First day for this verse, Matthew 7, verse 21. It says, "Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven." Matthew 7, verse 21. All right, as I mentioned, 2 Kings chapter 11 is the chapter we're in today. Hopefully you guys already read that, got a little something out of it for yourselves, and then joined us here today. If you haven't read this chapter, pause it just for a second, pause podcast, go back, read that chapter for yourself, and then jump back on here and listen to the rest of this. But a Crazy Queen, as I mentioned, is the title for today's lesson. Brother Sam, what does 2 Kings 11 say for you?
Yes, so we're going to be focusing on pretty much the first verse of the chapter, but we can see a few other things that happen that pertain to the story as well through the rest of the chapter. But 2 Kings 11 in verse 1, and that verse states, "And when Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she arose and destroyed all the seed royal." Okay, so hearing that verse, just looking at it, maybe at first glance, you might have just skimmed over this and not really thought what this means.
Mm-hmm.
Let's break it down for you guys.
Let's roll it back
what exactly happened? Okay, so you have Ahaziah, who is king over the northern kingdom of Israel, and he dies, and his mother, let's just say she did not take this very well. Now, this is understandable. You know, there's grief, and you talk about people that, go through different stages of grief, and there's mourning, and then,
Right.
there can be anger and all kinds of other things. She took this to a very different level.
Yeah.
Where she legitimately lost her mind, because this is not a situation that I actually thought this at first glance reading it of, oh, okay, well, it says she destroyed the seed royal. She's thinking, oh, well, somebody's going to usurp the throne for my son, so I'm taking out the competition. No, this is actually talking about the rest of her family.
Yeah, right, her actual family.
Grandma here literally is just going through the rest of the royal family and is killing her own family in order so that she can rule on the throne. And she does this and actually does reign for a period of time.
Yeah.
If you look in verse 3, it says at the end of that, and Athaliah did reign over the land.
Yeah.
So she actually succeeds at this, and this is just bizarre.
I know, bonkers.
I mean, you think of, you try to put this in modern day times. Like, it's hard to imagine, for this in the United States, but any country.
Yeah.
I mean, the news of the land, like the newspapers back then must have been going crazy with the stories.
The
of
newsstones.
And yes, all the slates that they were selling on the corners. But yeah, and you just think about, what the rest of the family was thinking. Of their mother, their grandmother going through and killing off the rest of the family so that she can rule in her son's stead because of grief, right? Anyway, so she's in a very bad place, and essentially down in verse 16, it does not end very well for her because she she is slain as well and joins her son.
Yeah,
So,
right. Yep.
um, all of that being said, I think one of the main things that you pointed out in your devotional that you wrote, um, we're all going to have times where we're faced with tragedy
Yeah.
in our life. And, we hope that it doesn't happen. We hope that it doesn't happen too many times, but everybody at some point in their life is going to have something that would be considered tragic
Yeah.
happen. And it's in those moments that we need to learn how to, not control our grief, but to be able to place that burden on the Lord.
Mhm.
The Bible says, "Cast thy burden upon the Lord, and he shall sustain thee."
Yeah.
This is obviously not what she did in this
No, not
scenario
at
at
all.
all. Because obviously this was not God's will that she goes and murders the rest of her family. Um,
Right.
um, but you think about anything, and you might not be as a teenager, you might not be facing specifically a loss of life in your family. Now some of you might be, and I feel for those that have experienced a loved one passing away this early in life. But it might be something else that is not on that level, but it's still something that could, quote unquote, scar you, right? It'll stay with you. It is a scar that you, or a burden that you would carry for life. And I think in those scenarios, it doesn't mean that it's wrong to feel hurt or to be sad or to have pain. Those are natural emotions and responses that is normal for us, and that's not sinful. What can be sinful is if we dwell and I guess we focus on the wrong things, whether we just internalize, bitterness in and of ourselves,
Mhm.
in regards to the situation, in regards to God, in regards to other people.
Yeah.
And basically, the main thing is what do you do when you're faced with a tragic situation? Do you fall on your knees and you turn to the Lord and say, "God, please sustain me, help me"? Or do you try to figure things out and cope with your grief in your own way, which
Yeah.
is what this queen did?
Right. Yeah. No, very, very, very true. A lot of good thoughts there. I think one of the things you brought out was that um, tragedy happens to all of us.
Yeah.
At some point, it's coming, right? And we cannot control what our circumstances are going to be. So many people like to control things that they can't,
Mhm.
or they try. I should say they try.
Right.
They try to control things that they can't. I can't control when someone's going to pass away, right? I can't control it. God knows when that's going to be. Um, and you know, I can't control what home life some of our teenagers have. Some of our teenagers have a rougher home life than other people.
Right.
I can't control that, and they can't either. And that's sort of the point, is that we cannot control our circumstances. Athaliah here could not control when her son was going to die. She couldn't. What she could control was her response to that.
Exactly.
And that's what it's the same today. That's what we can control. Can't control what's going to happen, but we can control how we take it. Am I going to allow, and I think where it becomes sin is when we allow those circumstances to change us as Christians.
Right.
I think that's when it starts to become sin. We allow it to affect our day-to-day happiness, our relationships. That's when the bitterness starts to set in and become a sin rather than just a temptation in the moment. So the question really is, tragedy in our lives, or even something negative, right? Something as little as losing something to something as great as, you know, losing a loved one.
Mhm.
Wherever in the spectrum our bad situation, circumstance, experience falls into, wherever it is, our response to it is what matters. You can't control the circumstances, you can control what your response is. So really the challenge is, hold on to God. Have him as your anchor. No matter if you have the greatest home situation ever or the worst. No matter if you have great siblings or bad siblings. No matter if you have an easy class or a hard class in school. No matter what it is. One thing, or one person, I should say, that never changes is the Lord. You can hold on to him. And then no matter how crazy the circumstances get, your your eye, your focus, your anchor is on Christ. And so then you can stay consistent and be the Christian you ought to be even through all those things. I think about Peter walking on the water.
Mhm.
those circumstances are kind of like the waves of the ocean crashing back and forth. And as long as he kept his eyes on Christ and held on to him, he was fine. He was floating. But as soon as he looked to those other things, his response changed. He became fearful instead of trusting. That was his response changing to those bad circumstances, those waves. As soon as that changed, he began to sink. So the challenge for us is keep your eyes on Christ, really is what it is. If Athaliah had just put her son's life in God's hands, she would not have responded like this, and none of this terrible stuff would have happened. So
Right. And there's
that's what
and when that happens too, like there is something like God does not let us go through those situations without having on standby the power to be able to get through
oh,
those
right.
situations. Now,
Yeah,
we have to ask God for that help. We can't do that in our strength, right?
sure.
But He is standing by and saying, I am here beside you to help you get through this. And sometimes we just get so wrapped up in our own grief and pity that we just neglect God and turn away from that.
Yeah,
And there's something that God has for us to learn in those situations. I've
yeah,
found personally through some of the hardest situations I've gone through in my life, that I have I have turned and had a closer relationship with God in those situations and learned things that I would have never learned any other way. And yes, looking back on those times, does it still something still hurt? Does it you think, "Oh, I wish that that hadn't happened." Sort of, but at the same time, you think, "Well, but I wouldn't have learned this about God. I wouldn't have seen him do this, and I wouldn't have seen his power and how he helped me get through this and
yeah.
survive this."
Very true.
So,
Yeah, yeah, very, very true. Really, lesson this morning about how to accept when bad things happen to us and hand over to the Lord and how to move through it. Very, very good. Don't be a crazy queen, I guess.
nope. Yeah, do not
Is
don't yeah.
that don't respond like Athaliah.
And you can yeah, and it obviously doesn't mean that, you respond to that extent, but we can do things of a lesser extent that still is sin
Yes,
in a response.
exactly,
So, yeah,
exactly.
avoid that. Good
Yeah,
lesson to learn.
yeah, very, very good. All right, well, that's our lesson here for this morning. As you go to prayer this morning, spend a little extra time praying for your family, whether it's immediate or extended or even farther, whatever family it is. Spend a little time praying for them this morning. And then for our teenagers, we want to lift up Abigail. We have here's the funny thing: we have 4 Abigails in our youth group, and I have assigned each of them a number because it is difficult to, when you say Abigail and they all come running.
Now, are you able to keep track of
Yes, the
so, like, this is
numbers.
not like just this rotating number that you call a number,
No,
but you're like,
it's
"Yeah, I
not.
really don't know who that
No,
is."
this is Abigail 2,
Okay.
and if she's listening, I think she knows who she is.
Okay,
So
cool.
we're praying for Abigail 2 this morning.
Abigail too. Abigail Dose.
Yes, keep her in prayer this morning. All right. Well, thanks for joining us here this morning. Hopefully, it was a blessing to you. It definitely was to me. Thank you, Brother Sam, for being a part this morning.
Absolutely.
And thank you, all of your listeners, for joining in this morning and being a part as well. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.